the United States and Israel launched coordinated airstrikes on Iran. Missiles struck Tehran. Nuclear facilities were bombed. The supreme leader was assassinated. Within hours, Iran fired hundreds of ballistic missiles back, not just at Israel, but at 6 countries across the Gulf. The world held its breath. How did we get here? And more importantly, who is actually at fault? This isn't a simple story. There are no clean heroes. But there is a clear timeline, a clear logic, and clear decisions that led the world to this moment. Let's map it out. To understand 2026, you have to understand 1979. Before the Islamic Revolution, Iran and the United States were actually allies. The US had installed the Shah, a pro-Western monarch, and Iran was a strategic partner in the Cold War. Then came the revolution. The Islamic Republic replaced the Shah. American hostages were taken. And from that moment forward, Iran and the US became enemies. Not just rivals, enemies. Iran's strategy was never to fight the US or Israel directly. Instead, they built what they called an axis of resistance, a network of armed groups across the Middle East. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq and Syria. These groups would fight Israel and bleed American influence, without Iran directly pulling the trigger. And Israel? Israel's relationship with Iran goes back to 1979 too. Before the revolution, they had ties. After it, Iran's government called for Israel's destruction, and meant it. For Israel, a nuclear-armed Iran isn't a foreign policy problem. It's an existential threat. In 2015, the world tried diplomacy. 6 countries, including the US, signed the nuclear deal with Iran, the JCPOA. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program. Sanctions were lifted. It was imperfect, but it was working. October 7, 2023. Hamas launched the deadliest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. 1,200 Israelis killed in a single morning. 250 taken hostage. A music festival. Kibbutzim. Families. The attack was not just military. It was designed to terrorize. Iran didn't send the fighters, but Iran had trained Hamas. Iran had funded Hamas. Iran had supplied the weapons. And Iran's proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, immediately activated, launching rockets at Israel from Lebanon and missiles from Yemen in what they called solidarity. Was Iran behind October 7th directly? Probably not in operational terms, but their fingerprints were everywhere. And here is where the United States gets pulled back in. Iran-backed militias in Iraq and Syria launched over 200 attacks on American military positions in the following weeks. In February 2024, they killed 3 U.S. soldiers in Jordan. That changed the calculus in Washington. Then, in 2018, President Trump pulled out unilaterally. Iran responded by resuming nuclear enrichment faster than ever. That single decision in 2018 set the clock ticking on everything that followed. What followed was an escalation ladder, each step pulling both sides closer to direct war. Step 1. April 2024. Israel bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, killing senior IRGC generals. This was not a strike on a militant group. This was a strike on Iranian sovereign territory. Iran was furious. Step 2. Iran's direct response. For the first time in history, Iran launched a direct missile and drone attack on Israeli soil. 300 projectiles. It was largely intercepted, but the precedent was broken. Iran had crossed a line it had never crossed before. Step 3. July 2024. Israel assassinated Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh inside Tehran, on Iranian soil, during a presidential inauguration. Iran called it a declaration of war. Step 4. September 2024. Israel assassinated Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, the most powerful non-state military commander in the region, who had led Hezbollah for 32 years. Iran lost its most important proxy. Step 5. October 2024. Iran fired 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. Israel struck back, destroying nearly all of Iran's Russian-supplied air defense systems. Iran's sky was now open. And then, the Assad regime in Syria, Iran's most important Arab ally, collapsed in December 2024. Iran's entire axis of resistance was crumbling. Hezbollah crippled, Hamas decimated, Syria gone, the Houthis isolated. Iran was being systematically dismantled, piece by piece. At the center of everything is one question. Is Iran building a nuclear weapon? Iran says no. Their nuclear program is for peaceful energy. And officially, no one has proven they've made a weapon. But here is what the data shows. By mid-2025, the IAEA reported that Iran had enriched enough uranium to potentially build 9 nuclear warheads. They were enriching at 60% purity, just below weapons grade. They had kicked out IAEA inspectors, and they had announced a new hardened underground enrichment facility. For Israel, this is not an abstract threat. Israel is a small country. A single nuclear bomb could kill a significant fraction of its population. Israeli officials are not exaggerating when they call a nuclear Iran an existential threat. This is why they have been willing to do things that violate international law, killing scientists, bombing embassies, assassinating leaders, because in their calculation, the alternative is extinction. But here is the counter-argument, and it matters. Iran is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. International law does not permit preemptive wars based on potential future threats. And the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency in 2025 assessed that Iran had not yet made a decision to actually build a nuclear weapon. So who is telling the truth? Probably both sides. Partially. Iran is clearly building the capability. Whether they intend to weaponize it is genuinely unclear. Israel launched what it called Operation Rising Lion, a massive surprise attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, air defenses, and military leadership. Nuclear scientists were killed. IRGC commanders were assassinated. Iran's air defense network was devastated. Iran fired back over 550 ballistic missiles and 1,000 drones. Israel's Iron Dome, Arrow, and David's Sling systems intercepted most of them. And crucially, 5 U.S. destroyers in the Mediterranean helped shoot down Iranian missiles. On day 9, the United States crossed into the fight directly, bombing Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan. America was now at war with Iran. The ceasefire came 12 days after it started, brokered by the U.S. Iran agreed to stop. Israel agreed to stop. But nothing was resolved. Iran's nuclear program was damaged, but not destroyed. Iran called it a temporary setback. Israel called it insufficient. The clock kept ticking. The 12-day war was not an ending. It was a warning shot, and both sides knew it. By early 2026, Iran was at its weakest point in decades. Mass protests had erupted inside Iran over economic collapse, the falling rial, infrastructure failures. The regime killed thousands to suppress them. Internationally, Iran was isolated. The US and Iran had actually been negotiating indirect talks in Geneva, mediated by Oman. They met on February 26th. No deal was reached. 2 days later, on February 28, 2026, the US and Israel launched their war. President Trump said the goal was to prevent Iran from ever getting a nuclear weapon. He also said it was about eliminating imminent threats. He later said, regime change, bringing the Iranian opposition to power. Iran responded with everything it had. Hundreds of ballistic missiles hit Israel. Iranian strikes also targeted 6 Gulf states: Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Jordan, all of which host U.S. military bases. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting global oil shipments. Hezbollah reignited its conflict with Israel from Lebanon. The Houthis resumed Red Sea attacks. The region was on fire. This is the question everyone wants answered, and the honest answer is, it's complicated, but not equally complicated. Iran is not blameless. They funded Hamas. They armed Hezbollah. They built a network of destabilizing proxy forces across the Middle East. They enriched uranium to near weapons grade while blocking inspectors. They killed thousands of their own citizens to stay in power. But the U.S. withdrew from the nuclear deal in 2018, the deal that was actually working, for domestic political reasons. That single decision accelerated Iran's nuclear program more than anything else. And in 2026, the U.S. attacked a country that was in the middle of negotiations with them, with no UN approval, no imminent attack on U.S. soil, and with stated goals that included regime change. That is, by definition, an invasion. You cannot invade another country because you think they might one day have a weapon. That is not how international law works. That is not how a rules-based world order works. If it is acceptable for the U.S. to bomb Iran preemptively over a hypothetical nuclear program, then it is acceptable for any country to bomb any other country they consider a potential future threat. That precedent should frighten everyone. And Israel, whose security concerns are genuinely legitimate, whose right to exist is not in question, has, in the process of defending itself, killed tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza, bombed embassies, assassinated foreign leaders on foreign soil, and now joined a war of choice against a country of 90 million people. Legitimate self-defense and war crimes are not mutually exclusive. You can have a right to defend yourself and still commit wrongs in how you do it. Nobody wins a war like this cleanly. Iran's regime may fall, or it may survive and emerge more radical. The Gulf states are now under fire from a country they were just starting to normalize relations with. Oil markets are in chaos. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes, is closed, and none of the underlying questions have been answered. Will Iran's nuclear program be destroyed or just delayed? Will regime change create stability or a power vacuum? Will the world accept that the most powerful countries can bomb whoever they want, whenever they decide a threat exists? The people of Iran did not choose their government. The people of Israel did not choose to be born surrounded by enemies. And the people caught in between, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in the Gulf, did not choose any of this. That's the part that gets lost in the geopolitics. The people. If you want to understand this conflict, don't just follow the missiles, follow the decisions. Who made them, when, and what they were really trying to achieve.
Because that's where the fault actually lies.